You were the one who let her in. It wasn't the emperor, it was you. You went to the emperor of your own accord. You said, bring Wu Meiniang back. You said it was a waste for her to be a nun at Ganyue Temple. You said bringing her into the palace would keep Empress Xiao in check. You thought you were making a strategic move. You thought bringing one person in would balance out another. You were wrong. The person you brought in had both you and Consort Xiao eliminated. Then, she locked you in that windowless room, the room you moved into. That door was shut by her orders, and that her was the very person you brought in with your own hands. Standing in that room, you recalled the day you went to the emperor to say those words. You thought you were clever back then. You thought you had seen through the palace's chess game. That game was one you lost, not to the emperor, not to fate, but to the very person you brought in yourself. You were born into the Wang clan of Taiyuan, one of the most prestigious families in all of Tang. Your family's name is recorded in the annals not because any single individual accomplished great deeds, but because your surname itself was a mark of distinction in that era. When you married Li Zhi, he was still the prince of Jin. You were his primary wife. You believed this was unshakable, your family's lineage and your position as primary wife. Together, these two things should have been something no one could ever challenge. After entering the palace, you discovered there was a language you had to relearn. Not the spoken language, but the unspoken language behind everyone's facial expressions. Who stood in a different position before the emperor today than yesterday? Whose voice carried the slightest nuance? Whose gaze held a hint of something you needed to ponder? You lived within this language, and you thought you had mastered it. You never bore a son. At first, this wasn't a problem. Then, little by little, it became one. Eventually, it became the biggest problem of all. When Consort Xiao gave birth to a son, you began to panic. You panicked not just for your own position, but because the entire Wang clan was weighing on your shoulders. You couldn't lose that position. Then you thought of Wu Meiniang. The day you brought her in, you thought that was your smartest move. Wu Meiniang was a concubine of the late Emperor Taizong. After his death, she went to Ganyue Temple as required by custom. She shaved her head there. She should have vanished from the annals of the court, but it was you who brought her back. You told the emperor, Wu Meiniang is intelligent, let her return. This was your plan. Once Wu Meiniang returned, she would divert Empress Xiao's favor. Empress Xiao's influence would be diluted, and your position as the Empress would be even more secure. You had thought this logic through long before you spoke it, and you believed it to be correct. The Emperor listened. He ordered Wu Meiniang to be brought back. On the day Wu Meiniang entered the palace, you went to see her. She kept her head bowed, her demeanor exactly as one who had just emerged from a temple should be, humble, quiet, unassuming. At that moment, you felt she was in your hands. You felt you were in control of the situation. Later, in that dark room, you replayed that day in your mind countless times. You wondered if you had seen anything in her eyes that day. You wondered if you had missed any signals. Every time you thought about it, you came to the same conclusion. Even if you had seen something that day, what difference would it have made? You had already spoken. She had already entered. Once those words were out, they could never be taken back. After she entered the palace, there was a period of apparent calm between you. She was submissive toward you. When she came to pay her respects, her demeanor was more humble than anyone else's. The gifts she brought were all things you liked, and the words she spoke were all things you wanted to hear. At the time, you thought this was because she knew you were the one who had brought her in. You thought she was repaying your kindness. Then one day, she came to pay her respects and brought a bowl of soup. She said the weather was turning cooler. She said the recipe was good for your health. She brought it over herself. She knelt before you, her eyes cast down. You took the bowl of soup. You drank it. The soup was sweet. There was something in it you couldn't quite put your finger on. You didn't think much of it at the time. You just drank it. Later, in that windowless room, you thought about that bowl of soup many times. You didn't always make sense of it. Sometimes you felt there was something in it. Sometimes you thought you were overthinking it. That perpetual sense of uncertainty was more agonizing than any definite answer. When she brought that bowl of soup, her eyes were downcast. All you saw then was the top of her bowed head. You didn't see her eyes. Later, in the darkness, you wondered, if you'd asked her to lift her head that day, if you'd seen her eyes, would you have seen something different? You don't know. You've already drunk that bowl of soup. You didn't lose that game because of some major event. You lost because of little things like that bowl of soup. Taken individually, none of them amounted to much, but together, they were your whole life. Before that door closed, you were the queen. What you became after it closed, no one told you. You only knew the door had closed. The sound of the latch clicking into the lock was soft, much softer than you'd expected. You thought, Such an important event should have made a louder sound, but it was just that soft. Then came the sound of footsteps receding, and then there was nothing. That room had no windows. It was a kind of absolute darkness, not the darkness of night. The darkness of night has the moon and the stars. The darkness here was the kind that swallowed the distance between your eyes and your hand. You reached out and saw nothing. You could only feel the air, damp air, carrying the scent of stone and earth that lingers after they've been in the shade for a long time. Then you saw the hole at the bottom of the wall, about the size of your palm. A little light from the hallway seeped through it. You lay flat on the ground, pressed your face against the hole, and looked out. You saw the stone tiles of the hallway floor. You saw 2 feet standing there, and then those feet walked away. Food is passed through there twice a day. You use this to keep track of the days. You learn to feel this space with your body. It takes 7 steps to walk from where you sleep to the hole. You know which stones on the wall are loose. Your hearing becomes keen in that darkness. You can distinguish the footsteps of different people in the corridor. The sound of the food deliverer walking is different from that of passers-by. You start talking to yourself, not because you've gone mad, but because the silence is too heavy. You say what today's food tastes like. You say there's one more pair of footsteps in the corridor today than yesterday. You say you remember what the plum blossoms looked like when they bloomed in the palace. You say you remember the feeling of standing in front of the mirror the first time you put on the Empress's gown. That gown was heavy. Standing there, you felt as if the entire empire weighed on your shoulders. Now, there is nothing left, yet you don't feel any lighter at all. Sometimes you think about the things you did while you were Empress, the petitions, the ceremonies, the audiences. The way they feel when you recall them in that room is completely different from how they felt when you were actually doing them in the palace. In the palace, those things were real and had weight. In that room, they become something else. Things you once thought were yours but never actually were. The imperial seal, the rituals, the people bowing before you, none of that was yours. Those were the emperor's, and the empress is that chair, not the person sitting upon it. You carved lines into the wall. You carved with your fingernails. Your fingernails broke. You kept carving with the broken ones. You didn't count the lines. You were afraid the number would be too large. Then, one day, the food improved. Not porridge, but real rice and vegetables. The tray passed through the hole was much more elegant than usual. You took out the food and felt its texture with your hands in the darkness. You didn't eat right away. You were thinking about this. You've been in the palace for so many years. You know that behind sudden good fortune, there's usually something else. You thought about it for a long time. You considered a possibility. Your stomach began to ache, not from hunger, but a different kind of pain. The footsteps in the corridor were different from usual, fewer than usual, lighter than usual, as if something had swept everyone away. Then you heard those boots. You recognized that sound. You've heard it in the palace for so many years, the rhythm of those steps, the force with which those boots strike the flagstones. Your hearing has grown so keen in that darkness. You can't be certain, but your heart is already racing. Those boots stopped outside your door. He says, "Are you all right?" With just those 5 words, you knelt on the ground. The stone was cold, digging into your knees, but you didn't care. Your voice was the kind it becomes after spending too long in the dark, a little hoarse, a little unlike the self you remembered. You said, "I am here. Please, your majesty, rename this place the courtyard of return." When you spoke those words, you poured everything you had left in that room into them. The words you'd whispered to yourself in the darkness, the days you'd spent lying by that hole waiting, the marks on the walls, the weight of that ceremonial gown, that bowl of soup, the palanquin that brought you to the palace, your mother's face growing smaller and smaller at the palace gate. Everything. You poured everything into that sentence. You believed in those words. In the moment you spoke them, you truly believed it. You thought he had come because he still remembered you. You thought the door would open. You thought the light would come in. Those boots stood outside the door for a long time. You knelt there, listening to that silence. You had no way of knowing what that silence meant, whether he was still considering, or whether he had already decided but simply hadn't spoken. You couldn't know. You could only kneel, your knees growing increasingly sore. You didn't move. Then, those boots walked away. You lay face down at the doorway, watching those boots recede, walking to the end of the hallway until they vanished. You pressed your face against that cool stone slab. You lay there for a long time. You told yourself that it was enough that he had come. His coming meant he hadn't forgotten you. You clung to that thought, knowing that if you let go of it, you would have nothing. The next day, no food came. You waited a long time. The corridor was silent. Nothing happened. You began to think your sense of time had failed you. You waited even longer, but still nothing. Your stomach started to ache, that hollow ache. On the 3rd day, there was still nothing. You were in that room. Your body and your mind were both grasping the same truth at the same time. That bowl of good food was there because he was coming. It was she who knew he was coming. It was she who had the food replaced. It was so he could see you were still eating decent food. Then he came. Then he left. Then that good food was no longer needed. You were just a prop in that arrangement. Your hands began to tremble, not from hunger, but the kind of tremor that comes when the body truly grasps something. You pressed your hands against the patterns on the stone slab. You felt its roughness. That roughness was real. You propped yourself up with that reality. Xiao Shufei is in another place. You know she's there. Sometimes you can hear faint sounds coming from her side. She's having a harder time accepting this than you are. She gave birth to a son. She once held real power in the palace. All of that is gone now. Sometimes you hear her crying. Sometimes you hear her cursing. You can't quite make out what she's saying, but you know who she's cursing. You and Empress Xiao were never friends. You fought for so many years in the palace. You won some battles. She won others. You played tricks on each other and spoke ill of one another before the emperor. In those years, your relationship was the most complicated one in the entire court. Two people locked in the same cage, tearing at each other over the same thing. Now, you are locked in an even smaller cage, each in the darkness. Sometimes you wonder, if you hadn't brought Wu Zetian into the picture back then, would you and Empress Xiao still be fighting it out? Maybe you would have won, maybe she would have won, but neither of you would be here now, crouched at the entrance to your respective burrows, listening to the other's sobs. On the fourth day, the door opened. Someone opened that door. Light poured in. The light stung your eyes. You shielded your face with your hand. Through your fingers, you saw several people standing there. You couldn't make out their faces. Your eyes hadn't adjusted yet. Before she was led away, Consort Xiao spoke a single sentence. She said, "Wu Zetian is a seductive fox who has brought us to this ruin. When I am reborn as a cat, I will make Wu Zetian a mouse, and I shall strangle her to avenge myself." She said that after her death, she would become a cat and come to strangle Wu Zetian. When she spoke those words, there was something in her voice, the kind of thing born when anger burns to its deepest depths. It was not ordinary hatred, but something deeper and colder. Those words later spread throughout the entire court. After hearing them, Wu Zetian forbade the keeping of cats in the palace for the rest of her life. She feared that the cat might truly come. You also spoke a single sentence before you were taken away. You said, "May everyone live long. As a consort, I have received the emperor's grace. Death is my lot, and I harbor no resentment." You said you harbored no resentment. You said that her receiving the emperor's favor was what she deserved. You said that death was your own fate. You hated no one. Before you spoke those words, you paused to reflect. You thought of the day you had brought her here. You thought of that bowl of soup. You thought of the sound of those boots receding into the distance. You thought of the marks on the walls of that room. You thought of Consort Xiao's words. And then you spoke those words. Do you truly harbor no hatred? No one asked you this question, nor did anyone answer it for you. Perhaps you truly do not hate her. Perhaps hating her would serve no purpose. Perhaps those words were the last shred of dignity you could grant yourself. You do not know. You only know that you spoke those words, and then you were led away. Later, Wu Zetian changed your surname to Mang and Xiao Shufei's to Xiao. She wanted everyone to remember forever what you were. Those two characters were written into the history books, read by all who study this period. That character will forever follow your name. But the words you spoke were also recorded in the annals. May all live 10,000 years. As a consort, I have received imperial favor. Death is my lot. I harbor no hatred. The words spoken by Consort Xiao are there as well. The Wu clan, with their fox-like cunning, have brought about this upheaval. In my next life, I shall be a cat, and the Wu clan shall be mice. I shall strangle them by the throat to exact my revenge. All three statements appear in the same book. Wu Zetian's fury, your lack of resentment, and Empress Xiao Shufei's curse, all standing side by side. Wu Zetian later became emperor. She was the only female emperor in Chinese history. Her story has been written into books, adapted into TV dramas, and studied for over 1,000 years. That bowl of soup was a detail in her story. You were an adversary in her story. Empress Consort Xiao was another adversary in her story. You were footnotes on her path to success, but the lines you carved into the walls of that room are not footnotes. The stone slab you finally collapsed upon is not a footnote. That afternoon you lay on the ground after those boots walked away is not a footnote. That wish for everyone to live 10,000 years is not a footnote. Those are yours, not part of her story. You were the one who let her in. You know this. You've thought about it many times in that room. Each time, your thoughts always come to a halt at the same point. If you hadn't spoken up that day, if you hadn't said, let's bring Wu Mainyang back, the story that followed would have unfolded differently. But you spoke up. At the time, you thought you were making your next move. Only later did you realize that by the time you made that move, the game was already lost. You just didn't know it yet. That bowl of soup, that room, those boots, those words, Huixin Courtyard. This is your story. That is all. Later, Wu Zetian changed your surname to Mang and Xiao Shufei's to Xiao. She wanted everyone to remember forever what you were. Those two characters were written into the history books, but the words you spoke were also recorded in the annals. The words spoken by consort Xiao were also recorded in the annals. The words of all three of you appear in the same book. Those ordered by Empress Wu to be written down, those you uttered before your death, and those curses consort Xiao cast before hers. They stand side by side. None has vanished. Empress Wu later became emperor. She is the only female emperor in Chinese history. Her story has been studied for over 1,000 years. You were an adversary in her story. That bowl of soup was a detail in her story. Your introduction of her was a turning point in her story. But the characters you carved on the walls of that room are not part of her story. The stone slab you finally collapsed upon is not part of her story. That afternoon you lay on the ground after the boots had walked away is not part of her story. That wish for everyone to live 10,000 years is not part of her story. Those are yours alone. Xiao Shufei said that after her death, she would be reborn as a cat to strangle Wu Zetian. Wu Zetian forbade cats in the palace for the rest of her life. Did that cat ever come? No one knows. The history books make no mention of it. But Wu Zetian lived to be 82. She ruled this country for decades. Perhaps that cat never came. Perhaps it did, but no one saw it. You spoke those words of yours. May everyone live long. As a consort who has received the emperor's favor, death is my lot. I have no regrets. It was you who let her in. You know it. You've thought about it for so long in that room. Every time you reached the end, you always stopped at the same place. If you hadn't spoken up that day, the story that followed would have unfolded differently. But you did speak up. At the time, you thought you were making your next move. By the time that move was made, the game was already lost. You just didn't know it yet. That bowl of soup, that room, those boots, that mention of Huixin Courtyard, that wish for long live everyone. This is your story. Your surname is Wang. That character, ordinary, simple, a surname anyone might have. You were Empress Wang, then the Python. Then you vanished into that name. But those marks on the walls of that room are still there. In that book, in that sentence, in the place where you carved them, stroke by stroke, with your broken fingernail. Huixin Temple. That name was never officially used. It existed only for the moment you spoke it, and then it vanished, just like you.